Sekeres and Price for Thursday, October 3rd, 2024. We're coming to you from the Nation Network studio built by Arbor Lee here at the iconic, historic Wall Center, downtown Vancouver. Turn a game night into a game weekend. Book your stay at the Wall Center. Enjoy the exclusive Sekeres and Price rates. 604-331-1000. Call the hotel. Mention Sekeres and Price. Some blackout date supply based on availability. Matt Sekeres alongside Blake Price. Four-time Juno Award winner Mike Rotterson hitting switches and conducting things. Also makes a mean hot sauce, I came to learn this morning.
Really?
Yeah. And he plays guitar. He's really a renaissance man.
Totally.
Yeah. Doesn't talk much on the show yet, but we'll get him there. And we'll start with our poll question today, as we do every day. Where does Nils Höglander spend the majority of time this season? Top six, bottom six, on another team. And we asked this because as we discussed the practice lines from the last couple of days, and today is an off day for the Vancouver Canucks, so no further information there. But as we discussed those practice lines, we all noted that Nils Höglander was down there on the third line and Daniel Sprong was on the second line with Pettersson and DeBrusk. Talking about how Sprong, if he can clean up some things in his game defensively, if that unit as a whole can play on the inside and get a good forecheck going, he likes the potential there. And of course, everybody was tweeting about Daniel Sprong's shot at training camp. It is an elite shot. He is a goal scorer, and his goals per minute, his offensive production per minute, is pretty good. Now, he's not a complete defensive player, but of course, neither is Nils Höglander. And we know what happened to Höglander, disappearing act in the playoffs last year. We know he hasn't been a Rick Tocchet favorite. Sometimes it's thinking the game, hockey IQ. Sometimes it's the defensive side of the puck. And so with the surplus of wingers after bringing in all these free agent winners, DeBrusk, Sherwood, Heinen, and Sprong, is Höglander the guy who shakes out for that much-needed top four right-side defenseman or even a third pair left-side defenseman to upgrade on Derek Forbort?
Both guys have been read the riot act numerous times. Both guys should be ready to get it from their new head coach. So I think in the case of Sprong, who's eminently variable, that's the threat for him. And for Nils Höglander, the threat is you're the expendable guy if you don't get it. So they both don't have a contract for next year.
When you say variable, what do you mean with Sprong?
They could put him on waivers and send him down. It's a variable contract. So,
you think there's a world where they're going to send him down?
If he's an unmitigated disaster? Yeah.
Oh, okay.
No.
But I mean, not in the here and now.
No.
Okay. All right.
I'm saying this season, though.
Okay.
He's got that threat now. He's eminently variable. There's no guarantee he's in the National Hockey League for the entirety of the season. So he's got to work for that. And Nils Höglander, similar. And in terms of his future with the organization, he has no contract for next year. He's got to work for that. So it's going to be a great battle. And they're not the only two guys that need to establish their presence. I mean, Denton Heinen has not been gifted anything, especially with Dakota Joshua not too far away. There's a bunch of guys that should be very, very hungry. But as it pertains to the poll question, that's what Nils Höglander's got at stake here.
So I considered all three for my vote here because Höglander scored 24 goals last year. He's buddies with Elias Pettersson. Apparently, Elias likes to play with friends. Or you remember Boudreaux saying that to us, a couple years ago. So there is something that has worked there. There's chemistry that has worked there. So I consider that, as you say, Heinen. Okay, shows you can hang, son.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a couple of spots in the top six where I think, Höglander could fit. I also considered on another team because I do think you're looking at an attractive trade chip to fill one of these holes on defense. I say that because he's a young player. He's scored goals. He's on a cheap contract. And there will be other coaches around the league that look at him and go, ooh, I can get even more out of him. Something to remember on Höglander as we go through this season. this is the final year where he is going to be cheap, per se. He is a restricted free agent with arbitration rights after this year. Now, he's making $1.1 million, and if you get 24 goals again for $1.1 million, that is exceptional bang for the buck. But you're staring down the barrel of compensating him at about market value next season and going forward. And unless he really improves his stock in the eyes of Rick Tocchet and the coaching staff, I'm not necessarily sure that is something that would be all that appealing to the Canucks as they build their team going forward, particularly when you have to find money for Brock Besser if you're looking to re-sign Brock Besser, not to mention improve the defense. So I do think you're looking at a critical season for Höglander in terms of his Vancouver Canucks future. And I do think you have an aggressive enough a front office that if that defenseman, be it the righty or the lefty, comes along and you feel is a major upgrade, much like Nikita Zadorov last year, and of course got even more aggressive at center ice with Elias Lindholm, I do think you're more likely to pedal Höglander than you are one of the free agent additions, unless, as you say, Blake, one of them goes absolutely flat. And I do wonder whether they look at it and say, I think we have enough depth on the wing that we would prefer to trade Höglander than a first-round pick or then Tom Wielander or Jonathan Lekkerimäki.
Probably true. It's just careful what you wish for, because if Nils Höglander doesn't have a great start, his trade value goes down. You don't get as much for him. If he has a great start,
that's it.
At his age and his price,
will he be indispensable?
Why would you want to trade him?
And of course, bigger picture, you didn't score enough goals, get enough shots against the Edmonton Oilers in the Stanley Cup playoffs. He is a guy with 24 goals.
And even strength.
Even if he's not your perfect guy, does he not help one of the big ends that you're trying to get to this year? And that is score more goals when space gets tight and things get difficult in the Stanley Cup.
But the stats guys love him. If you find a team,
for sure.
If Carolina, Pittsburgh, those teams, when they see 24 even strength goals, their eyes light up.
And fans love them too. And I can understand why all of this makes a little, some fans a little bit angsty. Got Al in my mentions saying, he doesn't get it. Why would you trade? Why would you trade one of your top young forwards? I hear you, Al. And yet, Blake, because of the way we phrased the question, majority of time this season, well, if he's going to spend the majority of time on another team, that's an early season trade. And so that's why I voted bottom 6.
7-6 on YouTube. Classic Price trying to trade Hogs every episode. Me? No. That's Sakaris over there. This is his pet project.
First we tried.
I just argued against it.
First we tried to trade Besser, then we tried to trade Garland. Now we're trying to trade.
Hey, you do need to trade something to get something.
That's it. That's it. And it is clear as day to absolutely everyone that if the Vancouver Canucks are going to get beyond the second round of the Stanley Cup playoffs this year, they're going to need to add a defenseman at some point.
That's the thing. They do. They need it. Guys, you look at those 6 defensemen right now. You can't be thinking, well, that's all set for the season.
No.
Dusting off the hands.
No.
Come on.
Dusting. Come on. Let's have the adult conversation about that. Because honestly, Blake, it's funny because I've just been looking at, predictions and all of that.
Mm-hmm.
I look at that defense in Sin City and I go, wow. Let's see. Theodore Pietrangelo, Haig Whitecloud, Hannafin McNabb, some combination thereof. That's a really strong defense. And the Canucks don't have that. And then I look at the other team that they're in direct competition with, the Edmonton Oilers, and some of the work they did up front. And I go, whew, that is a really good forward group, particularly top 9. And, the Canucks are probably not as good as Edmonton at forward, deeper, but certainly not the high end. And not as good as Vegas on defense, but they're probably better than the Vegas at forward, and they're probably better than the Oilers at defense. It's going to be a fun season.
Folks, we need to be able to have conversations about real issues Terry on YouTube, quit beating up Hoagie. You guys did the same to Garland at the start of last year. First of all, Garland requested a trade at the start of last year.
And the organization wanted to move him previous to that.
We didn't beat anybody up at the start of last season. And we just extolled the virtues of Nils Höglander. The truth of the matter is the team needs another defenseman.
Yeah.
And again, you don't get to trade away your worst player on your team and get a top 3 defenseman. That's not the way the NHL works.
Okay.
You've got to trade somebody that has some value. Remember that.
As I said yesterday, we're going to incorporate more of your comments from the YouTube live stream into this first segment. But I promise you, I'm not going to let him war with you.
I've been good up until now.
Blake and I have an incredible history on this front because when we started to do the show together, I was very new to talk radio and I wanted to fight every inbox battle. And Blake pulled me aside one day. It's like, hey, you can't fight every inbox battle. Let it roll off your back or don't acknowledge it. And then as we continued to do the show, Blake wanted to fight.
Well, that's not.
And then Halford and Bruff joined the station, and they wanted to fight every inbox.
But the odd inbox
I
battle.
have moved past the inbox battle.
The odd inbox battle is
it's cathartic.
Yeah. Terry says, "Don't you guys trust Alvin? Just let him do his job." Terry,
don't get him going on the trust thing, Terry.
It's his fandom. This is what you do. You put yourself in the chair and you say, what would you do here?
Where are they short? How are they going to improve? What do they have to do to take the next step? That's the discussion we're having. Yeah. Let's get to our top story. It's brought to you by Yellow Dog Brewing, Neighborhood Brewing, Yellow Dog Spirits, and Foolish Winery. Ratu Baines Amon fighting for final spots. And yet, as we will get to here in a couple of minutes, there is a world where all 3 of these guys make the team. We'll explain in a moment. But first, feather in the cap for Surrey's Arshdeep Baines. He has made it to the final cuts. And Coach Tocchet was asked about his continued bid to make the team out of the camp after getting an NHL cameo last year. He was asked about that yesterday. Here's Tocchet on Baines.
Well, I think sustainability. I think his camp's got, he's okay, but I think he's getting stronger. I kind of liked his last 2 games. Whether we get him in on Friday, probably a good game to get him in, see how he goes against, I'm sure Edmonton will have a good lineup again. Can he keep that level? Because we have guys who are pushing for, those spots. So, yeah, just doing the things that, winning battles, no turnovers. You get a chance to score, and like you did, the power play goal was a hell of a goal by him. Just things like that, that's the next level for him.
What I hear there is Arshdeep Baines has some really big stakes tomorrow against Edmonton. Because for him to classify the camp as just okay, but then talk about the improvement tells me there was a world where if Arshdeep Baines had not improved his play, he would already be an Abbotsford Canuck right now. That they saw him grow, as opposed to when he got his NHL cameo last year, when his best game was his first game and he sort of wallflowered from there. That they're going to give him more opportunity because they see the improvement.
Who'd you rather be, Aatu Ratu, who storms onto the preseason scene and has really good start and has petered a little bit, versus Arshdeep Baines, who
great question,
gained
great
grounds.
Question, which is why I think the stakes for Ratu are pretty high too.
Yeah,
against Edmonton tomorrow. Here's Arshdeep on making it this far.
Everyone's fighting for their own spot and job, and it's obviously sad when you the buddies and stuff like that, but it's all part of it, and it's rewarding. It's awesome to see that the hard work's kind of paying off, and I'm moving on a little bit further and further, and it's nice to climb the ladder.
And that's it. Climb the ladder. Even if this bid falls short, he has climbed the ladder here a little bit, which is excellent for Arshdeep Baines and for the Vancouver Canucks, and frankly for the community at large. To have a young South Asian kid play for the Vancouver Canucks, if he could be a regular, wow, what an awesome story, and everybody would be behind him.
And I love that he has climbed the ladder. Unfortunately, for all players that are in that category, it's a slippery ladder, because even if you are literally the last cut made by the Vancouver Canucks, you go down to the Abbotsford Canucks, and guess what? You got to perform, or else that ladder becomes a snake and you slide on down, and you've got to build yourself back up again. But hey, he's put forth a hell of an effort right now. And to Rick Tockett's point about the quality of the lineup, it is the Oilers' final preseason game as well. So you would guess it is at least a half and half lineup. I mean, most teams have whittled down considerably. There's no guarantee you get both Draisaitl and McDavid in there, but I think you've got a decent lineup. And that means that when you perform well against a decent lineup rather than the full prospect lineup, it carries a little more weight.
JPAT doesn't think it's going to be a full dress rehearsal for the Canucks.
But again, there's only so much you can do with the numbers that you're at, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you got to have a lot of guys in there.
Yeah. And of course, we fully anticipate JT Miller to make his preseason debut. Less certain on Blueger, more on him on a second. But of course, Nils Åman is still in the mix here. And he's played games for the Vancouver Canucks in the last 2 seasons. And going into all of this, he was slightly ahead of Aatu Räty and Arshdeep Bains, who have played a handful of NHL games. And so the inquiring minds yesterday at practice, and very good question, wanted to know what Tocchet likes about Nils Åman. Take a listen.
Well, I think he's a really good penalty killer. I've actually thought he played really well in Edmonton. But Om's the same as everybody. You gotta string some games together. You can't have a good game and then kind of fall off. And that's the hard part of the NHL, being a regular, is being the sustainability. It's hard to do. But he's I thought like the same thing with Bains. I liked his game last game. So he's fighting for positions. We know what he is, and he wants to improve.
And look, just reading between the lines, and this is me, when I hear he's a really good penalty killer, and I hear Arshdeep Bains' camp has been okay, and of course what Tocchet said yesterday about Räty, which was something similar to Bains, he highlighted some positives, but there was a but there and sprinkled in with what more he needs to do. But when I hear he's a really good penalty killer, I do wonder whether that will be the deciding factor, Blake, because Dakota Joshua is a penalty killer for them. And we learned yesterday that Dakota Joshua is not going to be playing early in the season. We sort of figured that, having heard no update on Dakota
and Teddy
Joshua.
Blueger's up in the air.
And Teddy Blueger is up in the air as well. So,
I mean, I think Teddy Blueger's good for the regular season.
I think so. I mean, he's been skating in a regular shift in practice.
Yeah.
We're going to hear from Blueger here in a second. But when he talks about, Åman needing to string some games together, look, I think there are 2 routes there for Nils Åman. Either go from being a really good penalty killer to an indispensable penalty killer, and I'm not sure he's arrived there, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like be, Guy Carbonneau light there. Be someone with whom you cannot imagine the penalty kill going forward without. Or occasionally chip in something offensively, if that's not too much.
Do you know where I stand
to
there?
ask? Or, work the hell on your face-offs and find a way to win more than 40% of them.
The truth of the matter is he's got a sample size. He's got a leash that he earned last year in terms of being a guy that he can trot out there, that Rick Tocchet can throw out there, and know that the world doesn't come to an end when Nils Åman is on the ice.
Yeah.
That is Nils Åman's calling card right now. It's not a great calling card,
no,
but it is a calling card as opposed to, and I think the reason why he's Luke on the prospects right now, the younger guys, is that he's going to wait to the last possible second to see if there's a game where they just implode, where they do cost them a game, where they absolutely make critical mistakes. And he goes, nope, I can't have that in my lineup on opening night.
Correct.
And so he's waiting till this last game at the very least. That's all he's got to work with. Get more looks, increase that sample size. How do you do under this situation, kid? Are you going to blow it for me on opening night? And he's going to see.
And so because he's a really good penalty killer, in the words of the coach, I think Åman has the edge now. But I also think, much like you outlined, Blake, he's a known quantity He's probably not going to improve from an offensive side of things. You know what he is, you know what he isn't. And long range and an 82-game schedule is absolutely long range. I would sit here right now and bet there's a world where Ratu and or Baines overtake Nils Åman during the course of this season.
Yeah, that should be an ambition for the two players indivially. That should be an ambition for the organization.
Absolutely, spot on.
And because the ceiling has been hit here for Nils Åman.
Because that's development, right? Åman, you got a little older as a Swedish pro who came over. Ratu, you got to a little later because of the trade, but as we outlined, yes, he's still very young. I mean, he's still stupidly young, given how many professional games he's played, AHL included. And Baines is a guy that you looked at and went, how is a local kid who led the Dub in scoring not have a spot with an NHL organization? Let's sign him and see what we can do with him. So you've got investment from a development point of view in Baines and Ratu that you don't necessarily have in the same measure with Åman. So you should be rooting for this as an organization, if you're Alvin, if you're Rutherford, that Ratu and Baines at some point leapfrog Åman and become regulars in your bottom six to start. Now to Blueger. Well, actually, let us know what our friends at Yellow Dog are doing, and then we'll get to Blueger, because Blueger's on the team. It's just a matter of whether or not he's going to be healthy enough to play tomorrow.
More from Neighborhood is coming up on Friday. That's tomorrow. They're releasing their much-anticipated fresh hop seasonal beer, the Freshy Fresh, two freshes. Freshy Fresh, West Coast IPA. It's loaded with some dope, fresh Citra hops.
I sometimes...
The word dope was written here.
I sometimes...
That's what the kids are saying.
Wondered where they got the names for all their beers there at Neighborhood and Yellow Dog. But you play 18 holes with Mike Coghill, or you spend an NFL Sunday with him at his bar having a few, and you know exactly where they come up with the names for these beers.
Dope fresh Citra hops from the Yakima Valley. From Yakima. No kidding. The beer's fat with a pH. It's fly, they say, and it's hella fresh. You dig?
I'm just glad you got this read.
They pay for me to say that, so that's why I'm saying that.
People say I don't pull off those words anymore.
I don't think you ever did.
Oh, I did at one point.
Okay.
Teddy Blueger. He with JT Miller have not appeared in preseason games yet. And look, it was worth wondering about Blueger here, because the guy reports to camp. We're told he's going to be a week away, lower body. He says, oh, yeah, everything's going to be fine. I'll be ready to go for the opener. And he doesn't get in any preseason games, so you're past a week. I mean, we're 2 weeks now. And, he still doesn't know that he's going to get into a preseason game. Let's hear from Teddy Blueger.
That's been good. I mean, I think it's been a couple weeks total of skating with guys out there, so feeling good. I think things are going pretty well. Better week to week, day to day, so it's been pretty good progress.
Do you expect to be able to play Friday? Do you hope to be able to play Friday?
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, probably not just up to me, but kind of a collective decision, and we'll see how it goes.
So despite the fact he was skating on day 2 of camp, it sounds very much there like 1 week was ambitious. He mentions it's gone from week to day to day.
He got it backwards, but we understood what he meant. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's
so collective decision on if he'll play tomorrow. Do you think, I mean, Blueger's a pretty trustworthy player. He's a pretty heady player, defensive side of the puck, penalty killing and all that.
Also,
do you think if for whatever reason, if he misses tomorr's game because he's not
doesn't matter,
do you think Tocchet has zero hesitation to just drop him in on opening night?
Yeah, because of he's an old man by Canucks standards at this point, and you don't need him to have scoring timing. If he's a scorer coming back from an injury, wouldn't mind seeing you take a one-timer with an opposition player in your face or what have you, depending on your game. This is not Teddy Blueger's game. Hey, do you want him to chip in every once in a while? Yes, but it's not the key thing that he does for the Vancouver Canucks.
Oh my God, the opportunities he got last year between Joshua and Garland.
Yeah, he could have done more
I mean,
offensively for sure.
I almost feel Teddy Blueger last year is what we used to say about young Yannick Hansen.
Mhm.
If the guy had hands, he'd have 20 goals.
Yeah, there were opportunities
Like,
there.
I wonder that when Teddy Blueger looked back on his season last year, especially as a UFA, because remember, Blake, he was a UFA, he re-signed with the Vancouver Canucks this year. I wonder if he sits there and just recriminates on, oh my God, the money I could have made if I had finished some of those chances.
So he was 6-22 in 68 games. I think it's very safe to say he should have set a career high with 10 goals and maybe had 25 assists.
Easily.
Yeah.
Easily. Oh, yeah, for sure.
And the 28 points was a career high. And in a diminished 68 game, that's not, maybe there a trade in there. No, yeah, it was. That was still a career high, 28 points.
Wow.
But it could have been better.
Mm-hmm. Dakota Joshua. So we hadn't heard anything on Dakota Joshua since the day prior to camp when he announced that he was diagnosed with testicular cancer in the summer, had a corrective procedure, and was in recovery, and said he was going to miss the opening of camp. I think we all suspected at the time it was going to be longer than just camp. But we learned yesterday from Talkit that he is going to accompany the team on his first road trip, that Talkit wants him around. Didn't for a second talk about him in a playing capacity.
No.
He talked about the vibe that Dakota Joshua brings to the group, how he likes the interaction. In fact, even talked about how he loves to see him smile. And I think that's wise. I think it's wise for Dakota Joshua and his recovery, right? To be around the guys and feel part of the group, and the vibe and all that. And I think it's also wise for the group at large that, they recognize and have the physical right in front of their eyes knowledge that Dakota Joshua is on the mend, on the return, and that you're playing for him as much as you're playing for the guy who's
Could be a good
in
inspiration.
uniform beside you. Exactly.
Yeah.
So the first road trip, everybody, is October 15th to the 22nd. It's a week-long trip. It involves games down in Tampa, in Florida, against the defending Cup champions, up to Philly, and over to Chicago. So you put that first trip together with the first itty-bitty homestand of Calgary and Philadelphia next Wednesday and Friday, respectively. And Dakota Joshua is going to miss a minimum of 6 games. That much we know. And so the question, would Dakota Joshua be an LTIR candidate when you're setting the opening night roster? This from our friends at Puckpedia. The Vancouver Canucks have $91,000 in projected cap space with 22 players. And I think what J-Pat said to us earlier in the week was prescient that I'm not sure you're going to see a final roster cut with the maximum 23 players, Blake.
Yeah, for sure.
The way Puckpedia is divvying it up, Oman is up with the team. Baines and Ratu are sent down. But 3 goalies, because Lankinen, Sheloves, and Demko. So Puckpedia has Joshua and, of course, Tucker Poolman as LTIR options. They mentioned they could submit close to the cap and subsequently add one or both of those players, Joshua and Poolman, to LTIR optimally. Then what happens? You call up Ratu, or you call up Baines, or you call up both. And let's remind everyone, Pius Suter has missed the last 2 days at practice. He's a little banged up. If Suter's a no-go, then you need one of Ratu or Baines. And if for whatever reason Blueger isn't good to go, or you have another forward who gets injured between now and next Wednesday and
again,
opener
not
against
long-term.
Calgary, exactly, then you may need both Ratu and Baines. So there is a world where Oman, Ratu, Baines are both on the opening night roster, if not lineup, depending on where injuries go from here.
Again, just to refresh, because it's been a long summer. You have a little knock, keeps you out for 2-3 games. You're on the IR. You still count against the cap. And so those little injuries are really annoying for a team that you have to account for the salary, but you need humans to populate your lineup. And so that's going to be very interesting. And Matt, I think they've got to be very realistic, and you can declare LTIR at any point. It can be retroactive. But I do wonder if they feel comfortable, if they should feel comfortable enough at the outset of the season, putting both Demko and Joshua on LTIR. Because what are they, again, 9 games is just the month of October. It's October the 3rd already.
Yeah.
Does it feel like Demko is going to be back in the month of October?
I don't know.
But does it
really,
feel like
it's really hard to know. No,
I
it
mean,
doesn't feel that way.
I mean, you would think you'd see him practicing for a week before he gets into the lineup.
Just to clarify, Pittsburgh, Carolina, Jersey, all at home to round out the 9 games the Canucks will play in the month of October.
So,
look, if Joshua's going to miss 6 already, Blake.
Right. For the salary cap implications and for the lack of needing to rush him back anyway.
He would have to be back a week after the Chicago road game to end the trip to miss less than 9 games. So if Tocchet is already talking about him being being accompaniment on that trip, then you do wonder whether that's the wise course of action.
Well, he'd have to be skating throughout the trip too, right? Like he's on that trip and he's skating and practicing with the team, and they do have at least one full practice day in between Philly and Chicago for that to make sense. Because again, you come back and it's 6 games, so you'd think he's on the ice ASAP. After the opener, for anything less than LTIR to be a possibility for Dakota Joshua. So they've got some realistic options to get out of cap hell for opening night. And they just got to hope too that these guys that are just a little bit banged feel a whole lot better, like Pius Suter and Teddy Blueger, because that makes their decision-making a whole lot easier.
Now, Tucker Poolman, and we've discussed this in the summer as well, there might be a world where it behooves the Vancouver Canucks, particularly if they want to stay out of LTIR, accrue cap space, and be able to afford a more expensive player between now and the trade deadline. We have talked about where there's a world that, hey, if you trade Tucker Poolman's money out at the cost of a mid-round draft pick, that can get you further ahead. And I woke up this morning and I saw our friend Hart Levine at Puckpedia with his opening night roster projections. And there was a paragraph there about the Vegas Golden Knights. And it's complicated, and I'm not going to get into all the X's and O's of the Vegas cap. But there was a paragraph there about, this is a team where it would make sense to acquire an LTIR candidate for the way they were going to chop it up and go forward. Because remember, you're trying to set a roster as close to the maximum dollar amount, the salary cap, as you can. And then when you've got a guy who's injured and is not playing, after you've set that roster, you put that guy on LTIR and you can exceed the cap by that amount. So let's say you come within $100,000 of the maximum spending limit. Is it 88 or 88.5? I forget. Well, in the case of a Tucker Poolman at 2.5, then you can go ahead and exceed the cap by 2.4. The 100 to get you up to the exact cap, and then everything after that is an overage. So I'm sitting there and I'm reading this thing about Poolman and Vegas, and maybe that makes sense. And then the Golden Knights get special dispensation on Robin Lehner.
Yeah, well, we're
going to discuss that later
in
the podcast. I'm getting choked up about it right now.
Needless to say, it's a fishy situation, and it's certainly not
deplorable.
Equitable. It's not equitable.
No, it's not. No, it absolutely not. This is more road paved with gold for Gary's favorite franchise, Vegas born. Such a great story.
One thing, let me throw this at you.
I'm not in the mood.
Not Vegas related.
Okay. I thought you were going to further try and bait me.
The Canucks 6 defensemen that we've looked at a lot here. We're seeing a lot on the waiver wire. By the way, they could claim Jared Tenorti and have maybe the largest defense core in the history of the National Hockey League if they claim Jared Tenorti, who's 6'6". Okay, that might be kind of fun. Over in Calgary, a BC boy on a PTO.
Oh, you and your
lives on.
Who dat?
Tyson Barrie.
Oh, wow.
He is down to the nitty gritty with the Calgary Flames.
Well, it wouldn't surprise me if he makes the Calgary Flames.
He is a one-trick pony in a lot of ways, although I think he's tried to round out his game in his later years here. And considering the lack of mobility that the Vancouver Canucks have, I mean, maybe they've got that guy in Christian Wolanin, but on the right shot with Tyson Barrie, I mean, you probably don't have to offer a whole lot here, Matt. Is that an easy way to get out of the immobility issues right now in their bottom pairing?
For me, Tyson Barrie was infinitely available during the summer, and they weren't interested. So that tells me everything I need to know about Tyson Barrie. If there had been a big injury on defense or something like that, then I would entertain circling back. But they haven't had an injury on defense, right?
Nope.
And they deemed him not good enough. They didn't want to pursue him in the summer.
What the PTO does.
I mean, unless they offer him a PTO and he chose Calgary because it was going to be an easier team to make or for whatever reason.
The PTO just gives you an up-to-date window into where he's at, which is to say he's clearly competitive enough that he's lasted to this point.
Yeah.
Because a lot of the other PTOs have been cut loose now.
You know, as we've outlined all
including
week
Alex
here,
Chason, by the way, he's been cut loose. If he can't get a job.
He is good for 13 goals in the net front area on the power play. Bucket. Look, as we have talked about with the Susie Myers and Forbert Desjardins pairs that we have seen all week at practice, puck transporting, puck moving to me is a concern for the Canucks. Myers had a very good season last year, but he's 35 now. Susie's not great with the puck. 34 Myers.
I guess my point would be, is Juleson a better quiver arrow to have in your quiver, or is Tyson Barrie a better arrow to have in your quiver?
Yeah.
You know?
And Juleson had a really nice step-up season last year. He played more NHL games than not. And I like him from a depth perspective. And frankly, I thought there were times last year where he was better than Ian Cole. But he is a similar profile to what you've got.
This is it. He's
to
not demonstrably faster.
To answer your question, and you love the waiver wire and the PTOs, my God.
They're free. That's why. Free acquisitions.
I have to call Dave Tomlinson in here and relitigate Teemu Pulkkinen. But to answer your question, yes on the profile of defenseman, no on that specific defenseman.
Okay.
Does that? Well, just because I think they had their shot to do that, Blake, and they chose not to.
For sure.
So I would look at it and go, there are a lot of players that are going to hit the waiver wire here. Is there a puck-moving, puck-transporting defenseman who's going to shake free that interests them more than Tyson Barrie? That I think is more likely than Tyson Barrie himself.
Seattle Kraken, an original expansion draft pick, Cale Fleury, right shot defenseman, available in the right.
I don't know as much about him. Is he a puck mover?
No. Well, to some degree.
Good story by Ben Kuzma of the province. Ben's had a good week. A couple of great stories. Enjoyed reading them. On Atu Ratu, who's got some confidence. Quote, I've had a great camp with good details and good line mates who I match up well with. I'm ready for this. Aatu Ratu giving himself a pep talk in the pages of the province. Big night tomorrow for Aatu. Big night tomorrow for Baines. And if you're Oman, just don't blow it. And as we've detailed here, there's a world where one of them makes it. There's a world where all three of them makes it between now and early next week. Abbotsford training camp roster is out. 35 players will vie for spots there. 10 defensemen, 3 goalies. Just looking at the defensemen, and I'm not talking pairs here, but you've got Wolanin and McWard, both guys who have played NHL games, lefty-righty. If you need a guy to come and be your spare defenseman, I think either of those guys could make sense. Brisebois, who has also played NHL games, and hopefully Guillaume Brisebois is healthy. Jet Wu, again, lefty-righty. Guys who have been with the organization for a long, long time are likely just AHL players. And then Kudratsev and EPD.
A
couple of young ones.
They're going to get every opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely.
I
think so.
Mm-hmm.
I think so. So when we have the discussion about do you want to add a puck transporting defenseman, all of that is great. If that means Friedman goes down and clears waivers, that probably means Friedman's playing for the Abbotsford Canucks. Let's hope not at the expense of one of the young guys, Kudratsev and EPD. And then there was this from David Quadrelli. And I think David Quadrelli talked to Ty Young, Canucks goaltending prospect, ex of the Prince George Cougars,
who just changed his address from Kalamazoo to Abbotsford.
Well, and that's it. And he said, so what do you think the future holds? And he was like, I don't know where I'm going to play. Like, I don't know if I'm going to be the emergency goaltender in Abbotsford or play in the ECHL. But needless to say, after the Lankinen signing, the crease was crowded for the Vancouver Canucks. Well, with Patera getting claimed on waivers by the Bruins, as David notes, Young's got a clear path to playing games in Abbotsford. Nikita Tolopilo's probably your starter there. But if Young can impress, then maybe he can steal some starts away from Tolopilo, much like Tolopilo stole some starts away from Artur Shilovs last year on the farm.
You don't see a lot of 20-year-old goalies in the AHL. So.
Well, and no, but that's the other thing, Blake, and that solved two problems for Ty Young. It solved an NHL problem and an AHL problem, because the NHL problem, or the pro problem, was, where am I going to play? Am I going to have to play in the ECHL because the crowded crease? But the major junior problem for him was he had been replaced last year as the Cougars starting goaltender. And if he was going to go back as an overager to the Dub, he was going to need a trade there. So I'm sure there's big smiles there. And then there's this from Mark Diver in Boston, who was curious on the Patera waiver wire claim. And he writes, I don't know what the Bruins are thinking with today's goalie move. And what do I know about goalies anyways? Well, I do know that Brandon Bussey has been one of the best goalies in the AHL for the last 2 years. Yuri Patera, on the other hand, has been a goalie in the AHL for the last 2 years. So it's quite possible that Yuri Patera is not going to make the Bruins or not be the backup goalie when the Bruins need a second goalie, and is going right back on waivers.
He's not wrong. Brandon Bussey's save percentage in the last 2 years, in the last 3 years, well, it was 5-game sample size 3 years back, but in the last 2 years, 913 and 924 in full half-season workloads of 41 and 32 games, respectively. Those are spectacular AHL numbers for a 26-year-old goalie. He's not exactly a journeyman.
Please don't let the Boston Bruins be sitting on another terrific goaltender who's going to make his way up the NHL.
They love them, the late bloomers.
Do they ever?
Tim Thomas, Jeremy Swayman, even going back to Byron Defoe was a late bloomer. My goodness.
Did they get Billy Ranford after Edmonton and he did well for them?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think. They had another late blooming goaltender, I want to say, years ago. Name will come to me. Obviously not Ranford. He was made.
Not Byron Defoe?
No, not Defoe. Oh. Did Defoe play in Europe a whole lot before he came over here?
No, AHL.
Okay. Because, I mean, Ullmark
Yeah.
who won a Vezina 2 years ago and is now an Ottawa Senator. But Allmark, you may remember, he was 6th round pick, had a number of opportunities in Buffalo, couldn't get the job done, moved to Boston, turned into a Vezina winner. Jeremy Swayman, I can remember Kevin Woodley educating us on Jeremy Swayman a few years ago. Was he a college free agent? No, draft pick. But worked his way up, and boy, some sensational work from Jeremy Swayman.
They've had
Over the
15
last
years
3
of
years.
winning, and
Well, that's-
they show no signs of
well-
slowing down. We don't need to talk about the Bruins.
No, I hear you.
They are annoying.
Well, you know what else they are? They have an exceptional general manager. Don Sweeney is, for my money, one of the best general managers in the National Hockey League. I know he's been an NHL executive of the year. If only Cam Neely would shut up and let him do his business.
And the Bruins also are in the back pocket of the league. So never mind your ABV stance. How about an ABB stance?
Oh, I've been ABB as much as I've been ABV. You know that. Jerry and Gary, the Jacobs family. Let's get to the menu, brought to you by Greta Bar. Hockey season right around the corner. Before it gets going, though, baseball, football, soccer. You've got 4 baseball games Saturday. So there you go. You go to the football game Friday night, you pregame at Greta. You go watch some baseball on Saturday, and then make your way to the soccer match, because it's right near the rink. It's right near the stadium. It's a great spot for all games, home and away. We're going to be there October 19th for a Canucks Army viewing party. Basketball Phil told me he's going to join us there on the 19th. Do you know how difficult it is to get Basketball Phil out of the house? Basketball Phil's coming on the 19th.
Wow.
We're minutes from your steps from the arena, from the stadium. The street food menu is fantastic. The smash burger, the arcade surrounds the bar, air hockey, some classic games, some new games, then weekly drink specials. 50 West Cordova, Greta Bar. Let the games begin. We'll talk to, who are we talking to? Oh, Corrado. Frank Corrado and Rob Williams on the show today. If you want to hear more on ABV, that's on the podcast side in hashtags. And as mentioned, we've got some show changes coming from Monday. We'll let the cat out of the bag tomorrow. Bet365 bets of the day. The segment brought to you by Bet365, proud sponsor partner here with Sekeres and Price. I liked your shout so much yesterday on Monday Night Football that I'm going to fall in line. Only the odds have moved.
Oh,
Tampa is now a 2.5-point underdog in Atlanta, and they're up to plus 115.
so rather than
On
the
the
money
money
line,
No,
Oh.
no, I'm going to go money line.
you're going to go money.
But if you wanted 2.5 are available for you. Baker Mayfield's quite a story. Love that running back they drafted out of Oregon, Bucky Irving. I think he's going to be a real good player. He's a catch the ball. And what's not to like about Mike Evans and Godwin and the receiving core there in Tampa? I see what Atlanta's doing. I understand what they're trying to achieve. I know they're better defensively than people have historically thought about, a soft dome team. But I'm going to take the visitors. Give me Tampa at plus 115 on the money line Thursday night.
They're still the Falcons. I'm going to turn my attention to the silly season of golf after David Skins, who exactly shot a 60 today, missed a 9-foot birdie on the 18th for a 59. This is on a par 72 course, Matt. No eagles. 12 birdies to get to 60. 12 birdies.
It's a good day.
But he's at plus 425. After you shoot 60, you don't win the tournament. We all know this. We know he finds a way to screw this up. Mackenzie Hughes.
Because coming down from a 60,
Yeah.
that is a long
Yeah.
way down.
Mackenzie Hughes shot a 65 today. He's in a tie for third right now. He's a former winner of the Sanderson Farms Championship, and he loves this course. Plus 1,200 for Hughes to surge to a win here.
And he's just played some intense golf
Yeah.
at the President's Cup.
Yeah.
Open an account with Bet365 today. Bet on a huge range of markets. So whatever the sport, whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Use code VANBONUS when opening that account. Frank Corrado coming up next.
In a season like this, you never want to miss a single second of what's happening on the ice, and you want to be around your fellow fans, right? Well, Greta Bar YVR at 50 West Cordova, the perfect spot to do so. Hey, if you've got tickets, a great place to pre and post. They've got drink specials every single day. And if you don't have tickets, well, stick around and soak up the atmosphere with all your fellow fans, play all the great video games and air hockey, great air hockey setup as well at Greta Bar YVR. We'll see you there, 50 West Cordova.
Sick Harrison Price from the historic Wall Center. This next interview brought to you by the Vancouver Canadians, thanking Seas fans for another unbelievable season at the Nat this year. If you're looking to guarantee your seat for all the 2025 action, and there'll be some upgrades to the ballpark, should look fantastic. Please visit CanadiansBaseball.com or call 604-872-5232. Joining us now, former Vancouver Canuck and TSN hockey analyst, Mr. Frank Corrado. How are you?
Let me ask you something. How dare they? How dare they?
Whom?
Blue
Put
Jays?
Phil DiGiuseppe on waivers.
Oh, your boy.
No one does that to my boy.
There was
How
a
dare
legit,
they?
And early too, Frank.
That's a sneaky little maneuver. That's a nice way of saying we need you, but we have to do a little roster configuration to make sure we can keep you in the fold. So we'll send you down early before no one else is making waiver claims right now. They're all filtering through their stuff.
But there was actually reports that he might get claimed. Columbus had shown some
Columbus
interest.
took a look, but
So
well, and the other thing, about that as well is, when Tocchet talked to me, he said, Frankie, that was a tough one. You can tell he really likes him some Phil DiGiuseppe.
I saw
Deej, as he called him.
What did he call him?
Deej.
PDG.
Deej.
I saw Tocchet, one of his quotes was like, we really hope he clears. Like, I hope he doesn't get claimed.
Yeah.
That's a little better than what Willie said to me when he put me on waivers, when he flat out said, I hope you get claimed because there'll be a better opportunity for you somewhere else.
Oh, no. He did not.
Yeah.
I ain't never going to play you, kid. So.
Hope you get claimed out there, pal.
Oh my God! Well, we've told your story a bunch.
You did, and it was not a better.
It was not better. It was not any better.
We told your story. I think we told it last week.
You thought Willie Desjardins was the boogeyman when really you were about to meet him, and his name was Babcock.
You have to have bad track record with the province of Saskatchewan at that point in my career.
So we told your story last week again, and it's a good one. And now it has us thinking about you a little bit, or people in your situation, because, when Bo Horvat or Jake Virtanen or McCann or even Besser was trying to make this team, wasn't a very good team. And they were first-round picks, like recent first-round picks. And so a little bit more understandable for a team to keep them late and give them a legit shot to make the team. As we look now at guys like Ratu and Baines, I mean, certainly for Baines, his shiny new toy status is long past. And even Ratu, despite being 21, same thing, not their draft pick, and has sort of been in a tough spot for the last 18 months in terms of the organization. So the fact that they've made it this deep, are they starting to convince themselves, not that they're taking it for granted, but are they starting to think I've got a real shot here? Do they have a real shot here, or are they going to get Corrado'd and play in the final preseason game and feel all good about themselves, only to be told you're going back, kid?
I mean, listen, I think both avenues are somewhat realistic, but for a guy like Ratu, whose job are you taking? Like, he looks good, and I think, the one game against Edmonton, what happens is when you play well early in the preseason, everyone's watching you even closer because they're like, this guy showed us something. So now we got to watch him and actually see if he's for real. Mm-hmm. And I thought the energy dropped a little bit in that game. I believe was it in Edmonton?
Yes, Edmonton on the
the
weekend.
game in
Or
Edmonton.
Monday.
You're like, the energy can't drop now. You got to ride that wave a little bit more, because now all eyes are on you, because you've earned that. You've earned all eyes being on you. And so the conversation goes from, do you put yourself in a position where all eyes are on you, to taking someone's job? And at the same time, if you're trying to take someone's job, how's that guy played? Because chances are that guy has played pretty well as well, because he doesn't want to lose his job. So I think there's like, it's almost like a perfect storm that needs to happen for guys like that, where you're right, Blake. It's not like they went into camp saying these guys could be penciled in. Like, you're really trying to turn some heads. I feel like it's a long process. And they're for Baines, like, at the end of the day, both those guys, if they can leave camp and say, I checked off all the boxes that I needed to check off, and I basically did everything I could do, I just couldn't make the team, I couldn't take someone's job, you can live with that. And that happens all the time. And chances are there's going to be injuries at some point, and you're playing the long game, and you're going to get called up, and that'll be another opportunity for you. But it's if you're not the first round pick, if you're not their shiny toy, like, you really have to, like, it has to be overwhelming. And that also has to coincide with someone not playing well, which is also a Corrado. When that last training camp I had in Vancouver, I will fully admit, not my best work on the ice. So probably warranted being on waivers if you just went by my play at the time. Just to make things clear. Just to clear the
You
air.
can also get salary cap too, which is difficult.
So, few things here. Number one, there's a expression in boxing: you're not going to beat the champ on points. You got to knock the champ out. And I think that applies here when talking about established guys or higher pedigreed guys. We're trying to make a roster. Secondly, how do you feel about him turning your last name into a verb, Corrado?
Yeah, I mean, it's fair. It's fair. Like, the Sakaris is a hole in one. The price is,
wow.
I don't know what the price is. We'll work on that. We'll find something this year.
Yeah,
Daily,
better get what
daily disappointment.
How does Big Sal feel about his name being used as a verb?
It's all in good fun.
So here's the other thing, though, fellas. We learned that Dakota Joshua will be joining the club on the first trip, which means Dakota Joshua is going to miss the first 6 games. Blueger yesterday and has continuously said he'll be ready for the opener. When asked if he's going to play in the final preseason game yesterday, he said, we'll see. It's kind of a collective decision. So there very well could be a world where Baines, Oman, and Ratu all make this team for the start of the season.
But you've got to be cap compliant.
Well,
so
and then there's the other side where if Blueger's back and they keep 21 because they start at home and because, cap wise, they can accrue a little bit of cap space, it may well be coming down to a battle of, one spot, and they're not even going to carry an extra forward until they go out on the road. So there's different sort of, and that's what I was going to ask you, Frank.
That's tough. I've seen that a lot now.
Pressure. Yeah, tell me about the pressure. Tell me about what it's like emotionally, psychologically, when you're in that mix and you were subject to all these different matriculations, some of which you have zero control over.
Okay, so, like, first of all, from the player's point of view, I think you account for, if you're a bubble guy like I was, you're kind of accounting for a 23-man roster. You're like, I just want to be around. I just want to stick around and show that I could be, I'm the guy you see at practice working really hard. I'm the guy you see, staying on the ice or going on the ice before. So when the time comes, you're not looking at Abbotsford and asking, who's playing well down there? Like, I'm right here and you've seen me the whole time. So, you want to keep yourself in the mix, because sometimes it is a little bit of a case of out of sight, out of mind. You can go down to the minors and, they're going to get the reports, but at the end of the day, there's nothing better than having the eyes that are actually making the decisions on you. And that being Rick Tocchet and his coaching staff. So if they're going to do a 21-man roster, now that's 2 guys that were maybe thinking, I had a chance to kind of sneak on and hang around and maybe get a shot. Now you're making different plans. So that's tough from the player's point of view. From the team's point of view, I saw this. I saw this with Toronto a couple years back. They were so capped out that they had to do basically a 20-man. Like they had no healthy scratches, and the lines literally did not change for the first week and a half, 2 weeks of the season. So then you're starting to talk about, okay, well, if they lost game 2 going to game 3, how different is it going to look? It's not. Like, it's just you're stuck and you're waiting for injuries. And like, I think for the coach, that kind of stifles what you can do with your lineup as well. Now, all of a sudden, you don't have the creativity to say, okay, I'm going to mix things up. I'm going to bring Oman in one night, or I'm going to put Höglander maybe on this line. It's like you're confined to what you have. So, from the player's point of view, from the coach's point of view, it's nice if you can have at least 2 extra guys. It just helps you, for players. There's a couple guys that can hang around a little more, and for the coach, you don't feel so stifled. That's who you got, and there's nothing else you can do about it.
For a contending team, though, when you've got your AHL team in the back pocket down the road, I mean, as long as you've got two-way guys, waiver exempt guys, that you can go up, bring up and down. I mean, if you can have a day where you're below LTIR and accruing space, don't you owe it to yourself to do that for down the road? Don't you? I mean, it kind of wreaks havoc with that young player who's waiver exempt, but maybe that's just the way maybe that's the modern game right now. If you got the AHL team close, is play with 20 guys for your homestand for your 4 games and stay below the cap.
Waiver exempt guy is going to hate it because he's likely still on a 2-way and he's going down and he's making, not to
75K,
not to bitch
yes.
about. Listen, it's good money. Like, there's worse problems you can have in the world, but you're making $80,000 in the American League, which is, good money. But you're also in the NHL making 700 to 800, maybe 900,000. So it is, it's quite a difference. And ultimately, as a player, you're not so focused on the here and now of the financials. You're hoping that you can stick in the NHL and sign another deal and a deal after that, you don't even think about that anymore. But you're right. I mean, the thing about having the team close, it does give you some advantage in that way. But I'll tell you what, man, like when I played in Utica, I would get a call on Friday night that someone got hurt in the game, and I was there for Saturday. Like, you could make it, you know what I mean? Like, you could make it work, and that was halfway, like, that was all the way across the continent, and I still could get there in one day's notice. Now that it's in Abbotsford, you're 45 minutes away. But the game is not, like, unless someone rolls an ankle walking to and from the rink, I don't see a situation where, like, in that regard, it's such a big difference, because if you could get there in one day across the continent, I don't know, like, we've kind of seen it done at that point.
I want to say it was a prospect with Anaheim a few years ago. Of course, they're in San Diego, and apparently he was up and down like 9 or 10 times during the course of a season. Look, I hear you, Frank. We'll see if there is any salary cap accruing going on here with the Vancouver Canucks. I want to ask you about Höglander, because it's 2 straight coaches here, Boudreau and then Tocchet, that have talked about him needing to be better defensively. Everybody loves him in the half court. Like, when you have the puck in the offensive zone, he is a dog on the bone, and everybody likes it, and it likes him in 24 goals. But it looks like Daniel Sprong is going to get first crack to play with Pettersson and DeBrusk. They went out and signed all these wingers in free agency, which I think was a little bit of a tell. And we know they absolutely need to improve the defense, particularly second pair right side, if not third pair left side as well. What do you think? What's your forecast for Höglander this season? And do you view him as expendable to try and get one of those defensemen?
There's 6 inches that matter the most to Höglander, and it's not on the ice. It's literally right here. It's the toolbox, because the player has all these tools. He can fly around the ice. He's got some grit to his game. He's got fantastic hands. He's got a good shot that we saw last year. If you watched him play in his time prior to coming over in the SHL, you really got to see the skill with the lacrosse goals and all that stuff like that. He's got no shortage of tools. It's all right here, where I don't think he thinks the game necessarily the way a coach would want him to. And so that's his issue. And now there's been a couple coaches that have kind of pointed that out. And at some point for him, it was probably going to have to go from, you're a young guy, you're trying to figure things out, but now you're starting to get it and you found it. And like, I think there's been signs of that, but there probably is still a little to be desired in that department. I just think he can think the game better. He can think the game smarter, and he's probably never been wired to do that because he's been so skilled. And now we're kind of seeing like the NHL. It can be games can be a little bit of a chess match in the NHL, and you have to be equipped for that. And not every shift. Not every shift requires everything. There's going to be some shifts where it's like there's just going to be non-exciting play that happens. It's just going to be a neutral zone kind of mucky shift where you punt it, they punt it, you get off the ice. That happens in the NHL. Sometimes you can't force the issue, and I think sometimes he gets caught in that. But I think if you want to talk about him being expendable, there's a team out there that would probably like to have his skill set, and will continue the conversation saying, if we can just get that 6 inches between the ears to think a little bit better, we might have something. And that, like, he will have the benefit of the doubt in that regard, because I do think he's a very skilled player.
When you have talent, there is always a coach out there who says, let me have him, let me see if I can work with him. The big debate Blake and I have been having, although he's come to my side on this. Do you play Soucy with Myers and then have Forbort and Desjardins play limited minutes as a third pair? Do you spread that out where you've got Myers with Forbort and Desjardins?
What's your take on this?
With Soucy, I'm spread it out.
What have I ever been loaded up?
Well, you were last week when you were making the analogy with. You made an analogy, Frank, that you've got a tiny slab of butter and you got 2 big pieces of toast. Do you take that slab of butter and butter 1 piece of toast and make it pretty close to, a regular piece of buttered toast with 1 dry, or do you try and parcel out that butter?
Wow.
Pieces of toast.
That's the price right there.
There it is. Making breakfast toast.
Metaphors. Yeah, that's my thing.
I guess you're asking. At that point, you're asking, is Vinny Desjardins a top 4 defenseman?
To some degree,
day to day. Like, yes, that's the crux of what you're asking. And I think if you've watched him in Edmonton, in a pinch hit situation, playing in the top 4, he's handled it well at times. But eventually, I feel like he kind of filtered his way back down to that third pair, and that just felt like a nice spot for him, where the ice time and who he was on the ice against, everything just seemed to fit right. I thought Tyler Myers had a really good season last year. And when I watch Carson Soucy play, I see a guy that makes good decisions for the most part, is better with the puck than some might make him out to be. So I don't have an issue with Myers and Soucy playing together, and I don't have an issue with Desjardins being a third pair defenseman. And, the ice time is probably going to reflect how you feel, or how the coach feels about Desjardins and Forbort as a third pair. Can they play 15 minutes together in the NHL? That's basically a regular shift without, special teams. And maybe, let's say, they kill a little bit here and there.
That's the thing. They can kill.
I have no doubt. I think 15 minutes, a regular shift. I mean, that's very much within grasp for both those guys, where I don't feel like they would be liabilities. And then, you also have to keep in mind, Quinn Hughes loves playing with Filip Hronek. Yeah. Like, he's talked about that already this year, how much he likes playing with Filip Hronek. So if my star defenseman, who's one of the best, let's call it 3 defensemen in the NHL, wants to play with someone because he thinks that's better for his game, he can play with that guy, and we'll figure the rest out underneath that.
I think we're in a modern zone of coaching here too, where, like, a third line. What is a third line? Does a third line actually even play that much more than a fourth line these days? They're just different than the fourth line, I think, in a lot of cases. Heck, last year there was times where the third line played more than the second line at 5-on-5.
It depends on your talent.
And it depends who your coach is. Like, there's still some coaches that will play the fourth line 7.5 minutes.
Right. And so with that in mind, to your point, do you just keep Roenick and Hughes pretty much away from the kill? And that reduces how much you need to guard against them 5-on-5, because Forbort and Desjardins, if they are a pair, they'll rarely go out at 5-on-5. They'll go out for every kill. And maybe that's where they eat up their time. You're asking them to play for 12 to 15 minutes a game. Maybe you can get by with a handful of 5-on-5 shifts because Roenick and Hughes are eating up so much time.
Well, you know what's going to happen too? Like the season is going to start, and I feel like we've had the same conversation the last few years. Man, scoring is up in the NHL. And how about these crazy fluctuations in the game where it's like this team came back from 2 down, these guys came back from 3 down. You know why? Because everyone's tinkering with their lineups, and everyone thinks they have the answer right now. And they're going to see by, like, I don't know, people say US Thanksgiving, Christmas, the New Year, whatever your kind of time frame is. But at some point, they will have, the correct structure of how their roster breaks out. But we're probably going to see it for more than a few games. And I think my stance on that third pair is that I don't see it being an issue to the point where it's like you have to get those guys off the ice because they can't go on together anymore. I don't see them being that bad. I think, dude, if I could play 15 minutes in the NHL, those guys can play 15 minutes in the NHL every single night.
You know what, Frank? You've changed my mind. You've brought me over to your side. I now stand in opposition to you.
Okay. Well,
and
put it to you this way. If they can't play 15 minutes, what the hell are you paying them for?
That was very, very fair. Very fair.
Hey, on the tinkering,
like less than 15 minutes a night for a defenseman is like less than 7 minutes a night for a forward.
Yeah.
Right. Like
if you're a defenseman in the NHL and you have to play 12 minutes because you can't play anymore, you should be in the American League.
That's right.
Speaking of tinkering, if they reduce the preseason down to 2 games, can you imagine what goal scoring will look like in October as teams are still figuring things out? That'll be fun.
Yeah.
Like October, I think, is already fun, but it'll be extra fun.
We'll also have all the skilled players available to score all the goals, so that'd be great.
That'd be good too.
Yeah.
And incidentally, next time you refer to Quinn Hughes on this program, one of the 2 best defensemen in the league. Not 3.
That's fair. I had him.
We're not abiding Adam Fox and some of these others. It is McCarr. It is Hughes. We will take no further slander.
Full disclosure, on my TSN top 50, I still had McCarr as the top defenseman, but I did have Quinn Hughes as the second.
Yeah, and that's
fair.
And that's fair. Like McCarr's got a longer track record of playing at that level.
Yeah, for sure.
We'll see what the season brings. We'll see if Quinn closes the gap even further coming off the Norris and can repeat. You're marvelous. Thanks, Frank. Till next week.
Boys. Thanks.
The Vancouver Canadians are back at the Nat. Catch fireworks, giveaways, and Friday nooners all spring and summer long. Get your tickets at CanadiansBaseball.com.
There's some price from the historic Wall Center. He is the national sports editor of the Daily Hive and its Offside Sports vertical. Rob the Hockey Guy on Twitter. Mr. Rob Williams joins us here on Sekeres and Price. The next time we talk to you, there will have been a game played, a real game played with stakes and points awarded. The home opener, season opener against the Calgary Flames.
So, we'll do a standings update and everything.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So, Rob, give me your season outlook here. 109 points last year. Where do you think they finished this year, points-wise and division-wise?
Yeah, I mean, I think like a lot of people, I think they're probably the second best team in their division. I think Edmonton probably takes the division, barring a epic collapse like they had at the beginning of last season, like the Oilers did. Without that, they would have won the division last year. So I'm assuming they pick up where they left off. Canucks finish second. I think it's going to be really hard for them to. I mean, it's interesting because I think they come into the season with not as good a lineup as they finished last season in the playoffs. But I think that they enter this season with a better roster than they entered last season. But
do they have the wiggle room to make it better? That's the thing.
But they don't have Thatcher Demko to begin the season. And I think the other thing is that everything went right for them last year. I felt like every bounce, it felt like they got the benefit of, they were good, but they were also lucky. And I think that it's going to be difficult to replicate that this season. I think you also, maybe the Rick Tocchet, bump was more significant last year. So I just sort of, just sort of on gut feel. I don't really have an analytical reason for you on this one. I think they're going to not be. I don't think they're going to put up quite as many points as they did last season. I think they're still going to be a playoff team. I think they're still going to be definitely in the mix. And I think for them to really, be in the conversation of a Stanley Cup contender, they're going to need a healthy Thatcher Demko, at the top of his game. So, So I'm not predicting doom and gloom, but I also don't think that regular season wise, anyways, that they're going to be able to reach the same heights they did last.
Let me ask you this: Have you reached have the Canucks fans reached the point where they are wake me when the playoffs come, or do you think fans?
Oh no!
Or do you think fans want to experience the regular season still?
I mean, I do. I don't know. I don't think they're at a point like that yet. I think it's wake me when the regular season begins right now. I think the preseason has been. It's funny. I feel like the preseason has been, like, the games have been entertaining. Like, reason for preseason games, I think they've actually been reasonably entertaining. But the preseason as a whole, I feel like has been boring in the sense that, and training camp, because we haven't really, like, what have we really had to sink our teeth into?
Well, there's no stars around either. Like, none of those big names are playing. So.
Exactly, and not that we need to see them shine in the preseason necessarily. It's more like, okay, how does Heinen fit on that first line? Does PD have chemistry with DeBrusk and looks like he's going to play with Sprong? Like, do they have a great chemistry? But, like, we haven't really seen everyone together. Even the defense pairs have been jumbled throughout preseason. So, like, what do we have to sink our teeth into? I mean, there was Jonathan Lekkerimäki. I think that was kind of fun, but I don't think many people actually expected him to make this roster coming out of camp. So it wasn't like he was, okay, I don't know that there was a realistic excitement with Lekkerimäki other than, okay, it's a nice little step forward for getting ready for the AHL. So yeah, I think this preseason has been a little dull in terms of storylines, in terms of things that we can really get excited about.
Well, the coaches have chosen preservation over chemistry testing. Do you think that was a worthwhile? Do you think that'll prove to be a worthwhile endeavor for them, and reducing their reps, but you don't get the chemistry test?
So I bit my tongue more this preseason because last year, remember how awful they started, and remember what the focus on the start of the season, like, they needed to come into camp ready to go, and they had not a very good preseason. They seem to be testing out things. The Cole McWard farce with Quinn Hughes. Like, I never thought that was going to happen. I didn't understand why they were wasting time with Hughes's partner. I did not think that was a very good way to enter a season at all. And of course, they came out of the gates just absolutely firing on all cylinders. They had an amazing start to the season. So I feel like I'm reserving judgment now because, like, hey, it worked last year somehow. But yeah, like, to me, it's counterintuitive. To me, like, why start the season and be having all these veterans and young guys kind of sprinkled within the lineup? Like, to me, start the guys that you think are gonna start the season, like, because clearly they now have their lines pretty well set for the first time in advance of the final preseason game. I would anticipate that first regular season game is going to match that as well. To me, the coaching staff pretty well had in their minds what the lineup was going to look like for the most part. Why not just start day one of training camp with your first line, your second line together? Maybe there's a little bit of movement after that, but, like, what are we doing with, Hughes getting all these different partners, unless you actually want to test it in games and see if you're going to move off of Hughes or Hronek. I don't understand why you.
If you're going to play two
I
games,
agree with
play
you
them with
on
those guys.
I
Yeah.
agree with you on Hughes and Hronek. With the forward combinations, I think a lot is in flux. So I've got more time for experimentation with the forward lines. And speaking of, you were amongst many who noted Tocchet's comments about Sprong and the opportunity that he looks like he's going to get there beside Pettersson and DeBrusk.
Yeah, I feel like Sprong is the real wild card of this season. right? Like you can tell just, yeah, I mean, there's obviously the knock on him is the defensive side of the game. When you hear Tocchet speak about Sprong, like that's quite evident that he's still a little on the fence, I think, on Sprong in terms of, just the way he talks about how they're going to work with him and help him get better and all those kinds of things. So I think Sprong, he's not a player that I've paid a ton of attention to over the last bunch of years, but you see the stat line, it looks nice. He's been one of the most impressive Canucks, I think, in preseason. You look at him, okay, he can skate, he can dangle, he's got a great shot. Like he oozes top six talent. Now, can he be the fit with Pettersson and DeBrusk on that second line and play well enough defensively that the coaching staff feels comfortable throwing over the boards? If he can do that, suddenly, that line with Pettersson looks very, very intriguing. And I think that's something that, it could easily go the other way, right? Like it kind of feels like an Andrei Kuzmenko light here, where, you've got this guy that can obviously produce offense, but if the coaching staff can't trust him, it's not going to work.
Do you feel like this team is
Well, I was just going to say, where does that leave Höglander? And answer me the poll. Where does he spend the majority of time this season? Top six, bottom six, or on another team, Rob?
I'm not ready. I do think that, it's not outlandish to say that he could be trade bait, in the future. I think he probably fits in. I think ideally he fits in on your third line, right? Like I think if Höglander's on your third line, providing energy, providing some offense, that's probably an ideal spot for him. I don't think he can't play on a second line, and I think you can definitely shuffle things up. And so I think he'll play top 6 minutes for sure. But I think ideally he fits in on your third line. And again, that goes into Sprong, right? Like if Sprong is a solidified fit in your top six, then I think that bumps Höglander down to the third line. And I think that's a good thing for the Canucks. Like having Höglander on your third line, it means that you've got, kind of echoing what the coaching staff said in the last couple of days, but that means they have depth, right?
What's your bet on how this team starts this season? Because not everybody's taking the same approach as the Canucks in the preseason, and that might affect how they ultimately start. They've got injuries to deal with as well. They've got, 9 games in the month of October. What is a good start, and can they accomplish that given where they're at right now?
I think they can have a good start. They've got Calgary in their first game, so that's should be an easier game right out of the gate. But then you always worry about, I had this worry. Like I said, I had this worry last year, starting the preseason like this, and going through preseason where you everyone's sort of taking it easy. It does worry me that you enter the season maybe not terribly firing on all cylinders, right? And then on top of that, they had such a wonderful year last year. You wonder, is the hunger, is the focus, is the desire just a little bit less than last season, right? Are players in the back of their minds thinking ahead to the playoffs rather than doing everything they can just to get there? Even the media pressure, right? Like the media pressure last year, it was like, this whole pressure with pressure. A lot of that was, the intense scrutiny on the team last year. Like that first month felt like each game probably felt like a little bit like a mini playoff game because there was so much importance put on the start. So do they let their foot off the gas pedal this season? I think that's a challenge for Tocchet and the coaching staff to ensure that they keep that focus, keep that hunger.
And it's a good shout because, prior to Tocchet getting here and, basically tell them you haven't done shit. That was one of the things that we had all heard about these Canucks. Like they'd win a few games and walk around town like they were cock of the walk, like, oh yeah, we're great. No, you haven't done nothing yet. You haven't achieved anything yet. That's why Patrick Alvin messaged as he messaged at the end of season press conference, that it was forward looking and aspirational, and we're not going to celebrate a second round playoff exit, even if it did come in 7 games with the third string goalie against Connor McDavid and the Oilers. So yeah, we'll see. It's a fantastic point, Rob, about will the talk it message, will the talk it way be as effective this year now that they've had
It was playoffs or bust.
a little bit of success, right?
Yeah.
Like last year, he was an easy guide to follow because the previous year was a catastrophe, and because I think a lot of them knew it was playoffs or bust, and some of them were playing for contracts and all of that. This year, it's a little different chemistry there. Lastly, Rob, so preseason being what it is, and in a Canadian market, you can find people to go to preseason games. Tickets got really hot last year, and they got really hot like by the end of October. Like they came out of the gates blazing, and the market was so ready for that because we hadn't had a lot of success here. You're working on a story about tickets for the opener on Wednesday against Calgary.
Yeah, more research is required on this one, but we did look at. I looked at ticket pricing when it came out to the general public, and I, searched under the home opener. It was like you couldn't get in for under $200. Like, and these are for like seats way at the back. If you look on Ticketmaster now, it's like there's tickets available for like $130. Quite a bit less. And these are not the resale. Like in a lot of games, the resale price is actually the cheapest price to get in, because season ticket members and pack holders get a cheaper price on their pack. They get a cheaper per game price on their packs. So they're actually able to undercut the general admission price.
Plus, they might just want to get something.
General public price. Yeah,
they just want to liquidate it for something as well, right?
Yeah, but I mean, they can make a season ticket member can make a profit off their ticket and still undercut whatever's available on Ticketmaster. In a couple senses. One is that their price is significantly cheaper than the general public price. And then the other aspect is the cheapest section in the building is not always available. Like the first, you always see this when the team is bad, you'll always see the first sections that fill up are the cheapest section and the best section. So center ice, club seats, lower bowl, that sort of thing. That fills more than the end zone of the lower bowl, and also the cheapest ticket will fill up more than other spots that are a little bit more expensive in the lower bowl. Yeah, it makes sense, right? You've got money and you want the best ticket. That goes quick, and just get in the building. Like there's not really a bad seat in Rogers Arena. That goes quick. So if you've got the cheapest seat in the building, you can really undercut it because that seat's not available often to the general public.
Well, one thing that was terrific last year is the spirit, the energy, the crackle, the excitement was back at Rogers Arena. I mean, it had felt like a library in previous seasons. It had felt like duty for season ticket holders to turn up to these games. So let's hope that continues, because that was terrific for the market, for the community. And of course, we will be relying on you for everything Rogers Arena related this year, Rob. You do such a great job on that. Thank you for this. And until next Thursday, my friend.
Thanks, guys.
It's happy hour on Sekeres and Price. Today's beer of the day from Yellow Dog is the Retriever Golden Ale.
Some Price from the Historic Wall Center. You can text us 778-402-9680. Email live at sekeresandprice.com. All of it to the Great Clips text message inbox. Great Clips. 2 days.
It's going to be great.
2 days in a row.
It's going to be great. You're so anxious.
You're missing your cue.
It's going to be great. So hard on me.
Caps were not great last night. I sat down to watch the game, and I thought to myself, boy, and we talked about it all week, this is a really big game, because this is the difference between Cap's going to cap and, okay, It is finally time for a deep playoff run from this franchise. And I think a win yesterday would have bred a lot of confidence about that. They get destroyed by their Cascadia rival, Seattle Sounders, 3-0 at BC Place, to the point where Vanni Sartini, head coach, is apologizing. Quote, "It's a pity, and we apologize to our fans. I apologize, because losing 3-0 against our biggest rival is bad. Yeah, if you want to be optimistic for the future, it's a good wake-up call." Well, you certainly hope so. Now, the good news for the Caps is that they actually held station in 7th place after that debacle. And that's because they got some help on the out-of-town scoreboard. Austin beat Portland 1-0. Real drew with Minnesota 0-0. And Galaxy beat Colorado 3-1. And you were okay with that because Galaxy is far and away gone. Caps can't catch them. So they remain 1 point up on Minnesota for 7th. And remember, 8th place has to play a play-in game. 7th place, you're through to the first round, albeit without home pitch advantage, and you're playing a pretty good team.
They can't be in an 8-9 spot after the season that they've had flirting.
Exactly.
I mean, a week ago they're in the top 4,
right?
So they can't be in an 8-9
So this
spot.
is a massive showdown now with Minnesota on Saturday at BC Place, and this is a 4:30 start too, right?
4:30 start for the next 2 weekends. Yeah.
So, I mean, you've got to win this game.
I'm very intrigued what the lineup's going to look like this weekend, because I think in the heart of hearts for Vandy, they would have won last night, taken the pressure off of this weekend, and maybe they would have let Ryan Gauld rest again.
Not so much.
I don't know that they can afford to rest him again.
To play. He has got to play.
I
know he's back on the Scottish side, and that is meaningful for him. But I think you have to appeal to him and say, Ryan, we need everything you have this Saturday. Because here's the thing. Had Minnesota won, had Portland won, Vancouver would be in that play-in game right now.
Yep.
So they're 3 back of Colorado for 6th place, and even upward mobility is a problem now. Because here's the thing. We've been telling you, they have this game in hand on just about everybody because of the rescheduled LAFC match from back in the spring. But even if they win that game in hand, they draw even with Colorado in points, but the first tiebreaker is wins, and they would fall short there. So it's a 3-point gap that works like a 4-point gap against Colorado for 6th. And now they are 6 back of Real Salt Lake for 4th and home pitch advantage.
If they had
with 4 teams to jump.
They had just drawn last night, they would have been in position.
But they didn't.
Yeah, but I'm saying
there was no world where they were drawing last night. They were horse bleep.
Yeah, it's and this is a home record now that is 6-5-4.
That's not nearly good enough.
Their road record is 7-5-4. They are better on the road.
That's crazy, because we spend years talking about how difficult it is to win on the road in this league, and honestly, like,
so maybe home pitch advantage doesn't matter.
I think
top 4 doesn't
Schuster
matter.
and Vanni Sartini have done a great job of creating a culture there, and also gotten rid of the excuses. Remember, you see here so many excuses from Caps coaches and managers. Oh, well, we don't spend like the other team. Oh, well, this team. You know, what I love about Axel and Vanni is they just put their heads down and they've worked. But it is now time for this team to go. We've never seen that in MLS playoff run. It's time. You know, you're more than a decade old here in MLS. We've talked about how when it's healthy, it might be the best starting 11 they've ever put on the pitch. Might be the deepest roster they've ever had. How bad was it yesterday? Fafa Pico picks up a second yellow, gets thrown from the game, boots a ball in frustration, and hits a security guard.
He went and apologized.
He did.
Yes.
Even the kicks in frustration were off target. And this from JJ Adams, the province. Maybe the Sounders aren't the draw they used to be. 17,362 at BC Place. It's the 4th straight game at BC Place that has seen less than 20K for the Sounders. Before that, it was 20,000 plus for the Sounders every game since 2014, which tells me two things. Number one, the Sounders faithful don't travel up here like they used to. And number two, these midweek games in the fall are not a good date and time for the Caps, because the Canadian Championship Series was a disappointing crowd as well. These games work in the summer when the kids are off on a beautiful night. Come on downtown, roof open. You're going to leave. Even when you leave the game, it's still going to be sunny or daylight left. But in the fall, when kids are back at school with their activities and everyone is back to their routine, that is a very, very difficult evening to draw.
I also think they don't have any momentum right now, the Caps. And when they had momentum, they finished the summer really well, in great form. But it was the summer, and many of you were distracted, and it went on deaf ears to some degree. So that right now, if they gotten red hot right now here, the last 4 games, if they were, I think maybe they get more attention and more people are walking up. But they've been middling now for a couple of weeks, and it's probably hurting them a little bit at the gate here.
Yeah. Saturday, 4:30 against Minnesota at BC Place. Sunday, October 13th, 4:30 against LAFC at BC Place. That's the makeup game, and a reminder, that is the game where Gauld, Ahmed, and Adekube are all expected to be missing on international duty. And could there be more missing on international duty for that game?
Theoretically, Andres Kubas could be in danger here as well. Now, they're targeting Stuart Armstrong to start in that match.
Good.
But I think I would push it up. I would push it up. I'd have Gauld and Armstrong in the starting 11 versus Minnesota if you can.
And then decision day, they are at Real Salt Lake. That's October 19th. That's a 6 p.m. start. I guess there's a world where Real is locked into position for that game and has nothing to play for. Unlikely.
No, they've fallen 2, right? And there's another lesson. There's 2 teams that made some noise in the summer transfer window. And while
who were they?
Oh, they sold big time. They had 5 or 6 editions in the summer. They were in second place in the West. Real did.
Yeah.
And messed with their chemistry.
Yeah.
And now they've fallen since. Now
they're in 4th place now.
They sometimes you have to sell. Andres Gomez, they sold and for franchise record transfer fee. Sometimes you have to pull the trigger on those sorts of things, but it's had an effect. And I'm not saying that Stuart Armstrong and Nadir Ocampo aren't better than Luis Martins and who else the Whitecaps jettison. They are better players, but they're just brought in.
Yeah, and it's so difficult to drop a player in at that stage of this. Vanny said this. He said the only guy who we have dropped in this window and who has had a positive effect on the team was Ryan Gauld.
Yeah,
3 years ago. Lions. Tomorrow, home to Calgary. They're almost in the same boat as the Caps. They're fading. They need wins. They're hard to figure out. They lay eggs in big spots. They blow leads.
Even on rest.
Right. Home to Calgary tomorrow at BC Place. 3 changes on the roster. Javon Catoy and Tyler Packer, the 2 Canadian starters, were unable to go. We talked about how they hadn't been practicing. Now, the good thing is the Lions were playing additional Canadian starters. So now they're down to the 7 that you have to have. Catoy going to be replaced in the starting lineup by Kieran Poisson at slot back. Now, I'm not sure he is going to give you a whole lot in terms of pass catching. You hope he can block. They come with an American guard, Corey Woodruff, for Tyler Packer on the offensive line. They made a trade this week. Jesrin Antwi, a Canadian running back, was added because David Mackey is still missing. Santi Evans didn't make it. Jordan Perryman in the defensive backfield. So you've got some changes there. Antwi is interesting, Blake, because, first of all, he's a veteran. And he's actually, like Mackey, he gets the ball a little bit. He's not a pure fullback. He's got 1,000 rushing yards in his career. He's got 52 catches in his career. He is also the master of the onside punt. We talked about that story last year where the Montreal Alouettes would pitch him the ball. He would punt, dribble it over the line of scrimmage as an onside man, and then recover it. It was a loophole in the rules that they very intelligently, very Belichickian, sniffed out and exploited. It has been changed.
Basically a free first down.
Yeah, exactly. So the line's a little bit ailing here as well. Pete Robertson didn't make it at defensive end either. He was limited practice-wise. So it's now an all-hands-on-deck situation, and you hope they're angry as hell after blowing that game last Friday to Hamilton on your home field in front of your home fans. Got to get this one. You're chasing both Saskatchewan and Winnipeg in the West, although Winnipeg gets a win, and that's it. Your hopes of finishing first are done.
I think back to midsummer when we were dreaming about the two BC Place tenants having storybook seasons. Come on, guys. The two of you.
I mean, the Lions looked so much the best team in the West early. Now, Winnipeg was struggling, and as you always say in the CFL, it's not how you start, it's how you finish. But BC looked like it really had a good team. And the roster looked terrific, too.
Yeah.
Playing all these additional Canadians. They were, some of them were really stepped up, young players. Packer, Beaulieu, others. Now, just patch the dam here. It is the Gravy Bowl. They're calling it the Gravy Bowl here on Friday, tomorrow, with a party, of course, on the plaza starting at 4 p.m. And $5 beverages there. So I'm going to the game tomorrow, and I'm going to be interested to hear the tenor of the crowd there, because the Lions accounts that I follow, the fans and the sea is angry, my friend.
Totally. When they give up the loss in overtime.
I mean, you just can't.
You see the people, and of course they leave because it's an overtime game. The game is over, but the manner in which they leave.
Yes.
You can see them flooding into the stairwells with anger.
Yeah. Poll question results from Wednesday. Hughes Ronick, Susie Myers, forward Desharnais. Is this the best way to slot the Canucks defense pairs? Yes or no? What did the people say?
People said no.
They said yes.
Oh, okay.
74% said yes.
Really? Okay.
Frank says yes, but the third pair is fugly. Adam says Hughes and Ronick going to play 40 minutes a night. Saw a bunch of this in the comments. Jay, Wolanin for Forbert. We haven't talked about that a lot. If Forbert just can't keep up,
yes,
and again, he was healthy scratched a lot. I mean, the majority. Wolanin's got some mobility and some puck transportation. Probably superior to both guys on that pair. Bauman, Juleson needs to be on the third pair. That's another thing. Like, if Desharnais struggles, as we saw at one point during the playoff series last year, Noah Juleson played some good hockey for the Vancouver Canucks last year.
Well,
could he steal some minutes there? Could he steal some games?
He didn't have many healthy scratches last year, just to be clear. He was mostly injured. When they signed him, first thing I did was reach out to Joe Haggerty, and I asked him that. I said, was he mostly banged up? And he said, correct. They missed him on the PK whenever he was out. So he battled some nagging injuries there.
Okay.
But I mean, I don't think that changes the profile of the player.
No.
And so Wolanin is a nice shout for a patch the dam sort of thing. I quite like Wolanin. I think
or Friedman too. Like, although Friedman's a different profile of guy. Like, he's also not most comfortable with the puck on his stick.
I think Wolanin is a puck mover alongside either forward or Desharnais. I don't think that's a bad second option, because
if it's with forward, then one of them's playing their offside.
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
But
Desharnais or Juleson with who knows? Jordan's optimistic. He says he can see Desharnais slotting top four eventually because of the organization's high hopes for him. And when I said, well, I'd split them, I'd put Myers with Forbert and Susie with Desharnais. Rob asked me, Matt, just curious, who's the puck mover on the Susie Desharnais pairing?
Susie would be qualified.
I guess I'm being kind. Thank you, Rob. Good catch. Errors and omissions from yesterday's program. We have a few. Blake wasn't ready for his Great Clips cue. I mean, come on. Matt Baker has edified us of the BC Lions at Bakes Takes 84, senior manager communications content for the BC Lions, on John Amos. Now, all the legend, all the lore on John Amos was that he played for or tried out for a bunch of these semi-pro or minor league football teams in the late 1960s, including the BC Lions and the Victoria Steelers of the Continental Football League. Now, when we brought you the item yesterday, we said, look, the CFL Encyclopedia has no record of John Amos, which means we don't think he ever got into a game, but apparently he was with the Lions in 87. Baker.
67.
67. What did I say?
80.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, 67. Baker. Amos did not play with the BC Lions. No record in our all-time game register, which is spot on thanks to historian Steve Daniel, and Steve Daniel is most meticulous. He's an incredible asset to the history of football in this country. But he doesn't appear on the camp or pre-camp rosters either in 67 or 68.
Something's got to give, though. Like, I don't think this just got manufactured out of thin air. Like, did he just go to a tryout and not make it?
It might have been a tryout.
Yeah.
Back then, and I know this because my dad in 69 got a letter from the Montreal Alouettes. We'd like you to come and try out. Basically a tryout before training camp.
Mm-hmm.
In the late 60s, it's not like the CFL paid huge money.
No.
Right?
No, God, no.
So you would invite more people than you needed. More people. It's kind of like a wedding. You want the wedding at 150, but you're inviting 175. 25 people or so aren't going to show up. It kind of worked like that back in the day. So he may have gotten a letter, come on up, try out, something like that. And
maybe he even did try out, but I don't think it is too widely circulated for it to be nothing.
It's been out there for a long time.
Yeah.
So anyways, you will not find a photo of John Amos, the late John Amos, now actor, in a BC Lions uniform. Maybe a Victoria Steelers uniform, though. I would like to see that.
They have not released any statements.
Thank you for joining us, everybody. Appreciate you connecting and spending some time with us. Please do subscribe to all our assorted channels, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcasts. We'll have some show announcements tomorrow about what we got planned for next week and going forward. Follow on social. That's X, Insta, Facebook, TikTok, YouTube. We're live on many of those platforms, 11:30 a.m. Pacific time, although that's going to change next week too. And please do support the community sponsors we keep telling you about and keep it local. Hey, everybody, if you're enjoying what you're seeing here, then follow along with Sekeres and Price on YouTube. I promise more content coming.
The kids call it subscribe on YouTube.
Well, how about liking it?
Do that as well. Smash it right now.